Well, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. My name is Jim Fott, and I'm a board member of the Scarborough Community Renewal Organization, SCRO for short. Is committed to creating and realizing bold visions to renew Scarborough. Our Scarborough series is held every other week so that we can showcase some highlights and have a spotlight speaker about what's happening in Scarborough. SCRO itself is working collaboratively through inspired action and learning. SCRO is a multi-stakeholder group of community volunteers seeking to renew Scarborough by advocating for economic development, better suburban planning, enhanced urban natural environment, social development, health promotion, arts and culture. We have 7 committees that are working hard for a better Scarborough. So the agenda for tonight is about 15 minutes, and there's time for questions as well, with basically a highlight of what's happening in Scarborough. And then we have our spotlight speaker, John P. Mason, which I'll introduce at 7 o'clock. He will have his presentation. There'll be time for questions following John's presentation. We've already got questions on the go, so I'm sure, John, you're going to be peppered with a few. But let me introduce Dave Fenton. He's going to be speaking on FIND, F-I-N-D, FIND Dining, an initiative between University of Toronto Scarborough College and Centennial College in the city of Toronto. We're celebrating Scarborough's rich cultural diversity through food. FIND Dining will aim to highlight local independent restaurants from the long-standing neighborhood favorites to the new and the hidden gems that are out there in Scarborough, and I keep finding them every week. This initiative will help residents and East End visitors find dining and discover the amazing food in Scarborough. Dave Fenton is the Industry Partnership Innovation and Work Integrated Learning Lead with the Department of Management at the University of Toronto Scarborough, working through their Innovation Center, The Bridge. And maybe, Dave, you can tell us what The Bridge is, because I'm not exactly sure. His portfolio focuses on creating multidisciplinary work integrated learning projects in collaboration with faculty, industry, and community partners. He also supports entrepreneurs in the new venture program, the African Impact Challenge, and among other innovation projects. Dave has presented the team's innovators work through the World Association of Cooperative Education World Conference. Some exciting stuff. Dave is currently pursuing his Master's of Education on top of all that, higher and adult education at the Ontario Institute of Studies of Education, OISE, at the University of Toronto. Dave has over 10 years of experience working as a corporate account manager and territory sales manager in the medical technology field for both publicly traded and startup companies based out of Scarborough. So Dave, over to you to tell us about FIND Dining.
I thank everyone, and thanks for the introduction, Jim, and really excited to be here to share this with everyone here tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and put on my slide deck here. Can everybody see that?
It's coming up. Yes, there it is.
Perfect. Great. So welcome to Fine Dining Scarborough. And as mentioned, it is a partnership supported initially by Councillor McKelvey's office, and she enlisted our support here at University of Toronto Scarborough. And we're, of course, collaborating with our great friends and colleagues over at Centennial College. And so what the project is focused on is really highlighting how Scarborough is one of the most diverse food communities in the city of Toronto. It's home, as you know, to many lively restaurants that embrace culturally specific foods, and they contribute to the overall well-being, heterogeneity, and prosperity of the East End neighborhoods that we love so much. And fine dining is really a Scarborough-made solution that is meant to share the diverse stories of the restaurants and increase customer traffic. It's a celebration of the unique strengths that exist within our community, and it's supported financially by the City of Toronto and is executed in partnership with the great students and faculty at both U of T Scarborough and Centennial, as I mentioned. So our project goals are to engage with Scarborough's restaurants to build trust and community around food. We want to form social networks and build a support network between local people and those restaurants. We also want to build capacity of the restaurant owners by conducting workshops to help them address some of their challenges. We also want to develop a sustainable website that celebrates the stories of Scarborough food while making finding these local restaurants much easier for the patrons. And we want to host a launch event that celebrates fine dining, Scarborough's restaurant community, and just bring everybody together to celebrate everything that's great about this unique, diverse community and the restaurants that are within that. And lastly, we're going to be creating a number of social media campaigns with the goal to share the stories of Scarborough restaurants and ultimately increase the traffic to those restaurants. So most recently, we've been working on this really since about last spring. We reached out to the councillor's office and we started working on some kind of immediate support for restaurants through a number of initiatives with the Digital Main Street and Go Toronto platform. But that got us talking about the need to do this project, and we started really kind of laying some of the foundational stuff to plan that out. That included doing some design and scoping and laying out the timelines for the project. But really, the most work has been happening since January of 2021, where we've had a project team of 5 software developer co-op students from U of T Scarborough, a project manager co-op. We also have a writer who's joined us from Ryerson's journalism program. We have a graphic designer who's working with us, and we have a technical project lead, and they're all working to build this website, and we're aiming to have it deployed by the end of this month. Centennial College students have been supporting us with doing continuous outreach to the restaurants to get them to sign up on the platform, and we're also assisting some of those restaurants in really customizing the information and telling the stories of the restaurants on the platform. We have a project advisory team that meets twice a week to plan the events and the promotional efforts. And we're getting as much continued support as we can through the work integrated learning initiatives that are both being offered at Centennial and UTSC. So with that said, I'm going to switch screens now, and bear with me here. I'm going to have to stop and then start up again. But I'm going to take you on a bit of a tour of the platform as it exists and the new test site that we have of what it's going to become. So just give me 1 second here and I'll open up those windows. Perfect. So right now, this is what you get when you go to finddining.ca. This is our landing page, and what you're able to do is get a little bit of an overview on the program itself. We explain a little bit of what's offered to restaurants and patrons, and if you want to get in touch with us, you can. But most importantly, restaurants can go here and they can click and create their profile. But also as consumers, we can go here. And just by simply putting in our first name, our last name, and our emails, we get put on the mailing list to receive updates about when the site's going live and when you can access any of the events that are being scheduled. So I encourage you to go there, as well as you can connect through this site to the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram that we have. And there's other means to contact the project team if you want to get in touch for anything related to the project. If you have an idea, an opportunity to support, let us know and reach out through the website. Now I'm going to share here the actual Find Dining website itself. This is the test environment one, but this is what the site's going to look like in its completed form. So basically by logging in, first you could sign up as a consumer and put in some basic information to create your profile, which is easily done. I've done this several times today in testing it myself, and you get a response back once you input this information in a matter of seconds. So it's really easily done. And then from there, you can create your profile. And I'll just log in and show you what it looks like once you create your profile. And so this would be the, again, consumer profile, so the customer profile, people who want to find dining and engage with the restaurants in Scarborough. And so I'll show you some mock-ups that we have. These are not the final versions of anything on the site. These are just kind of placeholders so you can get an idea of what's there. So it takes you immediately to the Fine Dining News, where we'll have a series of blog type posts up here on any of the updates related to the project, which are also searchable, as you can see here on the right-hand side. If we go to the home page, we'll see here, we're able to search right away for any types of restaurants in Scarborough that we want to find. We can search by cuisine. So if I want to look, as Jim had mentioned, he likes the Indian food in Scarborough. So I will search a restaurant there. And we see that we have one of our restaurants here, which is Mazhar's Test Restaurant, Mazhar being one of our students. You can also filter by the types of restaurants that you want and the various features that they have. So if you're looking for a certain price point, it'll do that filtration for you. If you're looking for a certain type of cuisine, it'll do that for you as well. And so there's a lot of opportunity to really do some exploration here. So just going back again, go and pick one of my restaurants here. You're able to, as a consumer as well, select favorite restaurants from that last page. And then once you do that, you can have them saved here under your, for some reason it kicked me out of my profile. So I'm going to log back in again. Actually, this is why, sorry.
No, Canadian? What you talking about?
No, this is, it was another window that opened up accidentally. So under my profile here, you can save your favorites and stuff like that. And so if I go to one of the restaurant profiles, I can see here that they have a lot of information saved on them. They'll be telling their story. This is just a placeholder, as I said, so they'll have actual stories to tell on the restaurants. There'll be links to their menu with pictures of some of their favorite dishes. As you can see, at Jenny's restaurant, they have the spiciest chicken around for $10. And then there's also other details on the restaurants, like what type of payments are accepted. The restaurants themselves can put up specials or other announcements that they want to in this side over here. And then also each restaurant will have the ability to put food pictures up or other pictures of their restaurant up on a carousel. As such, they can embed videos if they want to put up some content there. And then there's all their other contact information up here. So this is what you would be seeing as you're going through looking as a consumer into the restaurant. And then if you go in and search again for some of the restaurants that are around, you can add your favorites, as I'd mentioned previously. And then in adding those favorites, if you go to your profile under your user info, you can have your saved list of restaurants that you can have there. It also shows all the restaurants up here, as you can see on a map, so you can get an idea of where they are. And then as you're searching for restaurants, it'll also on the previous menu, it'll show you nearby restaurants that are around as well as part of that. And so those are a lot of the features and functionality that we have. And then of course you can link out to the social media and Twitter accounts that we have up and running. So I'm just going to go back again one last time and switch back to the slides to finish off here.
I think one question in everybody's mind is, when was that site go live? When is your launch for the website?
Yeah, so our goal for the website is that we're aiming to have it done by the end of the month. So the end of April, possibly first week of May. It just really depends on how some of the testing goes, but we're getting near the completion date. I just started the final sprint for the development team today, and they're going to be working on their final changes based on some of the testing feedback we've been receiving. So for anybody who wants to visit us, you can go to finddining.ca and sign up for the mailing list. We're also on social media, Facebook. You can find us Find Dining Scarborough. You can find us on Instagram at Find Dining Scarborough, or if you're on Twitter, perhaps at FD Scarborough, or you can email us lastly at info@finddiningscarborough.ca.
Change that to the others.
So if you could ask those who are not speaking to please mute themselves, that's great. Thanks.
As for our next steps, as I said, aiming for the end of April to launch the website. Right now, we're just populating restaurant profiles, testing and fixing bugs. Our outreach teams continuing to maintain regular contact with the restaurants, and we're finalizing some events for our event calendar and launch events and the workshop series. We have one coming up for restaurants focusing on digital media and social media and just communications in general. So would really encourage everyone who is interested to please sign up at finddining.ca, follow us on social media, as well as if you can share this within your networks, as well as any of your favorite restaurants in the community, please let them know about this initiative. We would love to have them on, and it's actually a great time for them because we have the bandwidth and resources to help actually write the content for their profiles for them, so we can save them a lot of time there and add a lot of value. So thank you again, everyone, for your time. I now open the floor to some questions about the platform. So thank you again, and really looking forward to seeing you join us on Fine Dining.
Thanks very much, Dave. That's very exciting. And we do have one question in the chat. How many restaurants do you expect will be up on the site on launch date?
That's a great question. It's hard to predict at the moment because we're working really hard to get as many as we can. So our goal, like it was to, if we could get about 25 of them to start, and that would start populating the rest, that would give us a good use case. But there's hundreds of restaurants that we're reaching out to in Scarborough. And so, you know, given everything that they're navigating through currently, trying to connect with them regularly has been a bit of a challenge, to be honest, but we're doing it really diligently, and we have a great team at Centennial that's supporting that.
Fantastic. Any other questions out there? From 7 o'clock, we do have to move on, but I have time for one last question before we move on to our spotlight speaker tonight. Carol, go ahead.
I really thought the landing page looked really great. And I thought all of the visuals and the logo, that was very clever. At least because I recognize at least 3 different kinds of like the utensils, but it looked like a map of Scarborough too. Is that right? Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's absolutely correct. Yeah, good eye. Yeah.
Yeah, that
It was-
was very appealing.
It was a student of ours, actually. She's been incredible at doing some of the design work and recommendations for the user interface, how everything's laid out on the website. And yeah, I thought that logo really hit the mark for representing the project and the community. I thought it was a really well done job.
It looks
I'll
very
let her know.
clean, bright, and it's good energy.
Well, thank you very much for that feedback. Yeah, I agree. Her work is very clean and bright, generally speaking.
It's very modern looking. It's a lovely looking sort of setup for that page for sure. So that leaves us at 7 o'clock. We're going to move on to our highlight speaker tonight. But before we do that, I always like to acknowledge when we have politicians in the room. So I'd like to welcome Councillor McKelvey, who has joined us tonight. Thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome. Our speaker tonight is John Mason. He's founding president of the award-winning group Friends of Guild Park. John's presentation is about renewing a Scarborough landmark, bringing the arts and people back to Guild Park. As a volunteer, he's involved in Guild Park's dramatic renewal for over 10 years. He's helped organize hundreds of park events and led thousands of visitors on popular Guild tours. Tonight, John shares his insider's view of the Guild Park's transformation and describes the critical role that the community plays in that process. After the talk, there will be time for questions and comments. And I have to say, I met John 5 or 6 years ago, and he's a spark plug. He certainly has got a lot of things on the go, and I'm very excited to have him join us tonight for this discussion. So over to you, John.
Okay, great. I'm hoping to share my screen and see if that's going to work. Can everyone see that landmark screen?
Yes.
You got it, John.
Okay, perfect. Now, okay, excellent. I think I know where I usually do this with in the park with dozens of people. So doing it electronically is going to be a lot of fun tonight. So tonight it's about renewing the Scarborough landmark, bringing the arts and people back to Guild Park. And I wanted to start with these 3 images because they really reflect what's going on. First of all, you've got the heritage artifacts that make the site a landmark. You have the community. You have energetic volunteers that really are making a difference in the park. This particular group was a local high schoolers who had just finished a shoreline cleanup that we do regularly. And then coming out of the shadows is the new Arts Center, the Clark Center for the Arts. And I'll be talking about all of this in more detail. So for tonight, I want to provide a virtual tour to explain what makes the site so special, how it was nearly demolished by neglect, and looking ahead to the next steps to make Guild Park have an amazing future. I also want to provide some lessons that our group has learned that I think really apply to any renewal project that starts from the grassroots. So to begin, I want to give a little bit of background about Friends of Guild Park. We're a volunteer group. We bring what we call whole park thinking to Guild Park. What does that mean? It means that everything in the park is interconnected. Where you walk, where what you see, where you sit down, the signage, how large the signs are, where the pathways lead to, all of these things that affect the visitor experience at Guild Park. These are things that we're interested in.
How are you feeling?
Sorry, we got some
I'm trying to
Good,
find.
so they gave you some pain meds?
Please turn off your microphone if you're not speaking.
Okay, so try and sleep. And
No.
she told me they were going to give you the
Got it.
Right. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So our group was launched in 2013. We had a lot of support from the community, from the charitable national organization known as Park People, and from Toronto City Hall, especially our local councillor, Councillor Ainsley. Our mission that we developed is to increase the awareness and the appreciation of Guild Park and make sure that it is both spectacular and sustainable as we go forward. It's a public destination where art meets nature. The picture on this slide shows the restored sculptor's cabin. This is the cabin that the City of Toronto restored, and in partnership with the volunteer groups, this is now being operated as a welcome center and an activity hub, very small scale. And of course, everything is kind of on hold right now due to COVID, but this was an amazing project that helped bring a volunteer partnered facility into operation at Guild Park. And that fits in with our mission. For the work we've done, we've received recognition from the Heritage Toronto, from Scarborough Rotary groups, from all three levels of government. And it really boils down to three words. We celebrate the park, we collaborate with the park supporters and users, and we advocate on its behalf. Now, quick question. I know you're all muted, but if you want to show your hand, if you want to raise your hand about how many people have actually visited Guild Park. Oh, nice. Okay, I'm not quite sure, and it's happening pretty quickly, but I think probably more than half, maybe 60% of people have. I usually also ask then, oh, I see icons of hands. This is really cool. And then there's also how many people have seen this in the past 2 years? Because a lot of people remember 10 years ago, 15, 30 years ago when they were married or went to a wedding there. So that's great to see that there is overall awareness. This is a special place, and I'll just give you a little bit of an overview. It's 88 acres in size. It's in the heart of Guildwood Village. So there's Guildwood Parkway, which is up at the top of that map where the yellow dots are, yellow dotted lines are. So that's Guildwood Parkway. Guildwood Village surrounds the whole park, and it plays a huge role as far as urban habitat is concerned, because it has a part of the Carolinian forest. It's an amazing habitat for wildlife, like this saw-whet owl that you see here in the picture, deer, foxes, lots of birds. It's on a migratory pathway, pollinators. So it plays an important role in the city's ecosystem. And I also want to take the time just to acknowledge that this land had been used for centuries by the First Nations. The Mississauga and others crossed this land, traveled across this land by land and by water to move between the Rouge, the Don, and in this territory. I have heard stories that there were artifacts from First Nations that were found on the site. I've never seen them, and if anyone can help me find them, that would be fantastic, because I think anything that we can bring forward that celebrate First Nations in this territory is important. I mentioned earlier on about the complexity before we actually got officially started. The property itself is owned by the Conservation Authority, by the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, but it is actually managed, most of it is managed by different departments of the City of Toronto. So it makes it very, very complicated, a very complicated place to get things done. So that's the background. Let's go to some more recent history by going back about 100 years. So this is what the very first European building looked like on the site. It was called the Bickford House, the Bickford Residence. Obviously, it was done by the Bickford family. Colonel Harold Bickford was a military man. He was from the Canadian infantry, in fact, and he decided in 1914 to build a country estate in the arts and crafts style on the site. He owned about 16 acres and he put a 33-room home on it. He also put gardens and a polo field because he loved polo. So this is actually how the guild story really began. Now, the arts and crafts style is very particular, and Scarborough actually has a number of examples of it. I just wanted to give you, as far as perspective is concerned, the Scarborough Golf and Country Club, the Miller Lash House at the Scarborough campus of U of T, and Cedar Ridge Creative Center, which the City of Toronto operates as an arts center. These are examples of other arts and crafts style buildings that still remain in Guild Park. But if we go back to the Bickfords, the original estate, the Bickfords only lived there for about 5 or 6 years. They moved out, they sold their property. It had a series of owners. It was vacant for a while, but things all changed in the pivotal year of 1932. And that's when Rosa and Spencer Clark came on the scene. Now, this is a fascinating couple, and their story needs to be told in much more detail than I can do it tonight. Rosa was a widow. We would call her a cougar in today's terminology, because she was much older than Spencer was, and she had the money. She bought the Bickford estate on her own, but then she married that same year. She married Spencer Clark, and together they decided to create a place where they would create an art colony in the middle of the Depression. And this was an amazing idea. It became a home to artists. The Clarks actually opened up the estate that they bought to artists of all types to create and display and to sell their work. First, the artists came, and then visitors, curious visitors, and even celebrities came to the park to see what was going on. This is what was going on. There were studio buildings. There were artists and visitors who would try their hand at different crafts. These are the hand looms that were very popular in the 1930s. Spencer and Rosa realized that, hey, why don't we sell some of these items in their house? So they created a gift shop, which you can see in the lower corner. And this is what the back of the property looked like in the 1930s. It was a very, very popular spot. And it was so popular that people wanted to stay overnight and have meals there. So in short order, they actually created a dining room in their estate, and the tables and the chairs and some of the other furniture was actually carved by the woodworkers on the site. So here was a wonderful example of arts and crafts decor in an arts and crafts style building. I'm really happy to be able to show you this detail of this one wooden chair. If you really look closely, you might actually make out that the chair in the color photo is actually the same style as in the black and white photo from a postcard in the 1930s and 40s. You can see the charming horse's head that was carved in the back of each of the chairs. So it was an amazing way of bringing the arts to life at the Guild of All Arts. But the Clarks actually were visionaries, and they didn't want to just run a dining room or an inn. They wanted literally to change the world with art. They wanted to create a community around their home that would be a place where people might live better, where there would be a cooperative guild where artists could work, could train, very much like the medieval guilds of the Renaissance. They also knew that having a garden village that was in harmony with nature would be an amazing addition to what they were doing on the site. So during the 30s, things just kept growing and expanding. Tourism kept happening. But then we all know in 1939, World War II happened and tourism stopped. The supplies for the artists dried up because of the war effort. Food became in short supply, and the Clarks had to put their dreams on hold. However, the Guild did not go on hold. The Canadian government realized that the secluded location of the Guild was ideal for a secret project that was going on during World War II. Now, from 1942 to 43, the Guild was used to train women's Royal Naval Reserve personnel. For the public consumption, this was called radio telegraphy courses. These were very basic courses, so the women personnel would be able to know how to use radio signals, radio equipment. But in fact, this was part of the Enigma project, which you may have heard of if you've ever seen the recent movie, The Imitation Game. This was the major Allied secret weapon to decode the German messages from all around the world. The Guild had a small part to play because there were two classes of Wrens who were trained at Guild Park in the basics, and then they went on, they were transferred throughout North America to be part of the Enigma project. As the war started to wind down and wounded veterans started to come back to Toronto, in fact, there was no veterans hospital in Toronto from the 40s, and the Guild was actually transformed from a training center into a military hospital for veterans. By 1947, our first veterans hospital, Sunnybrook, was in operation, and the patients moved out, the veterans moved, and the Clarks were able to reopen the Guild to a new golden era. And you can see that from the 40s, 50s, into the 60s, the original Guild Inn building that was then, first built by the Bickfords, it expanded with a new hotel tower. You can see in the bottom drawing. If you look really closely, you can see there's an in-ground, outdoor, kidney-shaped swimming pool. There were tennis courts. This became a place where not only celebrities, but world leaders came to visit. Prime Minister Lester Pearson visited. The Aga Khan came to visit. Queen Juliana of the Netherlands came to visit as part of her royal tour in 1967. So all this expansion was taking place, and this really was a popular spot. But the Clarks also realized that more people could come to the site, not just for tourism, but as a community. So they decided, Spencer Clark decided to hire the best Canadian planner. He hired different developers, different marketers, different designers, and he created a village in the woods by the Guild, hence the name Guildwood Village. He opened up the Avenue of Homes in 1957, and thousands of people, like 25,000 people, came to see what was going on. And again, it was the idea of bringing a beautiful, well-designed, affordable property to everybody, so their world could be better by art and design. amazing concept. So just to kind of recap, here's what the Clarks were able to provide as their legacy. The Guild of All Arts in the 1930s, the Guild Inn in the 1930s up to the 60s and 70s. They established Guildwood Village. And the fourth aspect is the one I'll talk about now. It's the art and architecture displays that are now at Guild Park. This color picture shows the then Premier of Ontario, Premier Bill Davis, at the podium with Spencer Clark sitting behind, and he's announcing in 1982, August 6th, 1982, the Greek Theater was being officially launched, being officially opened. You can see in the picture in the middle, the Greek Theater being assembled with Spencer Clark in front of it. Why did he do it? You have his own words. I couldn't bear to think that this chapter of our heritage would be reduced to rubble. What was being reduced to rubble? You take a look at the neoclassic building on the side. That was the Bank of Toronto building that was built in 1914 at the corner of Bay Street and King Street. It was built with marble arches, marble columns, and by 1965, it was being demolished to make way for the TD Center. Spencer Clark thought this was wrong. There was no protection on heritage style buildings. So he got the pieces, he got the pieces to Guild Park, he reassembled them and made them into something that was beautiful and useful, a performance center. And I'm sure he would be smiling today if he looked and saw this picture of the importance of being earnest being played on the Greek Theater just a few summers ago, a production of the Guild Festival Theater, which is ongoing at the park. So an amazing, again, the vision of taking these old marble artifacts and turning them into something useful. Now, the Greek Theater wasn't the only example. There are more than 50 different buildings with artifacts that are on display at Guild Park. Another notable one is from the Bank of Montreal. This building was built in 1948, right across the street from the Bank of Toronto, and it featured these life-size sculptures designed and sculpted by some of Canada's most notable artists of the time. What the Bank of Montreal wanted to do was to show the growth and the natural resources of each of the provinces and territories of that time. So you can see, if you look closer, you see PEI with a, I guess my laser pointer doesn't work, but these are potatoes that are being moved from a basket into a barrel. Over here in the Northwest Territories, you have this wonderful figure holding on to uranium. You might just be able to pick out these shadowy effects up here. That's the Big Dipper, to show that this is taking place in the north of Canada. Spencer Clark was a friend of Pierre Burton, the renowned Canadian writer and historian. And Pierre Burton said it best. He said, to walk through Guild Park is like walking through history. And when we do the tours of Guild Park, this is our way of keeping Pierre Burton's comments alive and the legacy of the Clarks alive as well. Unfortunately, life is fleeting, and with the Clarks, as they aged, there was no one to take over from them, and their dream began to fade with them, and so did the Guild. So we go back to 1932. This was their original dream of the Guild of All Arts. They decided in 1978 to sell their property and their operation to the province of Ontario, and it got transferred over to the Conservation Authority. It got transferred over to the municipality of Metro Toronto. It got passed over to the city of Toronto. But by 2001, it had closed. The operation was in decline. They closed it up in October of 2001. And 10 years later, this is what it looked like. It was boarded up, and it was at risk of being demolished by neglect. That was what the National Trust for Canada said in 2011 when they put the Guild in on its top 10 endangered list of all historical sites in Canada. That wasn't all the bad news that was going on at the time. One of the one of the places where the studio was burned down to the ground in 2008. We found out that the structure was uninsured, so it was not replaced. The hotel wing was demolished in 2009. It was meant to become the site of a new cultural institute, a tourism institute that Centennial College would run. Unfortunately, those plans fell through. And could things get any worse? Unfortunately, yes, because then Mother Nature came and she added problems with ice and insects. If you remember the ice storm of 2013, that exacerbated the damage that the emerald ash borer had already done in the Carolinian forests at Guild Park, and more than 3,600 mature trees had to be taken out of the forest. Now, is it any wonder that people were asking what was ahead for the dream of the Guild Park? What was going on here? What could anything be salvaged? Could the Clarks, be, their ideas, could they come back? Well, in retrospect, it's a little bit easier to see what was going on. There was a basic flaw with how things were operating. No one was taking charge of the entire site. There were too many different departments. There were department, doing small little things, but no one was looking at the big picture. And the plans that were being made, they were being done in isolation. And I know that as soon as I say the word silo, Gerard is going to smile, because that's exactly what was going on. There were silos of responsibility taking place at Guild Park, but they couldn't see the forest for the trees. Also, this was happening in around the mid-1990s. What was going on in the political scene? The amalgamation of Toronto. Guild Park in Scarborough was a low priority for what was going on in the city. The question was, who cared? Well, I can answer that. It was the community. Things didn't actually start to turn around until the community got involved. Volunteers, quite frankly, and I was one of them, we were frustrated. Let's put it that way, that after decades of failed plans and no action on the site, what could be done? We decided to create some new initiatives. And what could we do? I mean, we were volunteers. The city did everything, supposedly. So what we did is we started to look at some of the best practices of other places that had gone through renovation, restoration, rejuvenation. We looked at Harborfront and the waterfront, where the arts community, art gallery, performance center was. We looked at Evergreen Brickworks with its nature and its education and features. We looked at what was going on at the Rouge National Urban Park. Now, last time we heard about what was happening with the Rouge National Park. At this stage, the national park was still had yet to be announced. So we were following the pathway of what they were doing with and the things that they were doing with the public consultation was huge. And then the granddaddy of them all is in New York City with the Central Park Conservancy. This is like the Friends group of Central Park. And they've done an amazing job of turning around Central Park. They started way back in the late 60s, early 70s, but these were best practices that were known and that we followed. So what did we do? First thing we did is we started finding out what we could do that was high impact, low risk. I didn't put it here, but it was essentially no cost. We did park tours. We did fun events with the community for Halloween, for Christmas. Then we started to collaborate with other stakeholders. We talked with the other groups that were using the park. We started talking with city officials. We had to learn, what are their constraints? What are their responsibilities? And then we found out that we were able to, use what they had told us. They had come up with this management plan for Guild Park that became our blueprint for what activity could be done at the park. And we started to provide our own advocacy. Here's the report that we did for the future arts programming at Guild Park. And we even went and invited Mayor Tory to come to the opening night of Guild Festival Theater on the Greek Theater for Pygmalion. And you know what? He came. It was fantastic. What a win that we had. So these were things that gave us confidence. We got some awards. We got some credibility, and we're very pleased about that. Now, moving to another arena, the city and a private company were at the same time coming up with a plan to restore the old Guild Inn, and this was taking place sort of in its own arena. Now, in the past, the community had spoken with city officials very strongly about the facilities that we'd like to see in the new renovated Guild Inn, things like a restaurant, things like meeting space, things like activity centers, things like this. So we had put that on the table. However, the $20 million restaurant and events facility agreement was actually made between the city and the private developer. The construction started in 2015. Things, the plan looked really good. 2 years later, the ribbon cutting was taking place. And really, it was a spectacular renovation, redesign. It really was a work of renovation renaissance. Just a beautiful work of bringing that original 1914 arts and crafts style building, which you see in the center, that white stucco building, bringing it back to its original line, its original design, and expanding and modernizing the rest of the facility. The problem was, and this was a serious problem, was that the public and the park users learned that it was beautiful to look at, but it don't go in. It was for paying guests only. And as a result, this beautiful facility, it lacks a public restaurant. It lacks a public cafe or a bar. There's no public access to the public art that is on display inside. There's no public washrooms for the thousands of people that come to Guild Park. Even though the public input was provided, it was not realized. And if you look in the bottom corner, it's all encapsulated in that little sign that you find all around the Gildan estate. This one is on the patio, private property, no public access. This was a huge opportunity that was lost. There was an ample opportunity to follow the Clarks to make sure that this was a facility for paying customers as well as the public, but that didn't happen. It's been now, it's off limits for the public, and I continue to shake my head about how those decisions were made and why the community was not listened to. But the story does not end there. There are other renewal projects that are going on with public input. Let me talk very quickly about 4 of them. The sculptor's cabin that I mentioned at the onset, this has now been restored by the city. It's a volunteer welcome activity hub that we work in partnership with the city of Toronto on that. Huge win. The activities in the park, this particular one was for a walk program we did 2 summers ago. People told us that it was life-changing, that this was a way that they could stay active and enjoy nature. Wonderful example. The heritage plaque. We raised $7,000 for the installation of the very first official heritage plaque on the site. We still have to do work to get the landscaping around it, but again, big win. The fourth one is going on right now, and it's the Clark Center for the Arts. And let me just take a few minutes to talk about where that is, because this may be, in fact, the most important new facility in the park. Let me tell you how it started. In 2014, it was a vacant building, one of the many vacant buildings at Guild Park. It was originally built in 1963 by Spencer Clark for his office and as a warehouse for the art. By 2014, it had been deserted. It had not been used for years, and it was just lying there. Now, I love telling you this story, and it's not me, but a volunteer was walking through Guild Park. He passed this building, and he had a vision. He had a vision that there was a third floor on top of this building, that it would be gallery space. And he brought that to a public, to one of our meetings. Okay, so I know Photoshop. So we got together and we created a mock-up of hey, here's an interesting idea. Here's a concept, add a third floor. The city had actually spent about 20 years trying to figure out how to make this area a cultural precinct. It was again an example of a project that never went anywhere for various reasons. But we had this concept and we shared it with the city. And lo and behold, they listened. At a public forum with architects, city officials, and the community, we put all of this on the table. And the architects, Taylor Hazel architects, they were literally all ears. They looked at the plans, they listened to us, they were really interested in the history, in the ideas, on what they had there, and even the constraints. Later that same year, 2016, they came back with their architectural plan. This one was a little bit more complicated than shopping images together. They had done the design, they had done the engineering. They realized it was possible to put a functioning third floor on that existing building. And then construction started, and here's what it looks like right now. Pretty close to the design. We've got that third floor on. It would be open by now if it hadn't been for COVID. So, and this is not a facility just for Guildwood Village or just for Scarborough. It's for the whole city. And the whole city is really interested in this new, quote, breathtaking arts and cultural center. It'll be opening next year, early 2022. It will have artist studios. There'll be art classes for the public. There'll be gallery space. You can see that it really fits in beautifully with the artifacts that have been installed around it and nature. And to me, it marks the return of artists and public art programming to the site for the first time in 25 years. So what are some of the lessons that all of this journey have we learned? I wanted to give you just a few. They're not 10 commandments, but there's 7 suggestions about what are the lessons that we as the community learned from the grassroots. So here they are in no particular order, but the big thing is you want to act now. You don't want to wait for experts. The fact that you live and are active in the community makes you an expert in that community. You have as much right to have a voice at the table as anyone with a architect degree or with a whatever position they have. You're the community voice, and it's important that you take action from basic the basic community. At the same time, there are voices and there are voices. If you want your voice to matter, it should be an informed voice. So do some homework, understand some of the things. I mean, you can go to public events and forums and complain and point fingers and say this is whose fault is it? Not very productive. You can do it, but it doesn't move things forward. Do some homework, spend some time, understand the issues at hand, and come up with some ideas and suggestions. A good source of that are best practices. Identify things that have happened, that have worked elsewhere, and apply them to your situation. And then get started, start something. Do what you can do with what you've got. Start to build some momentum. You can start building that momentum, fast by collaborating. You don't have to do it all yourself. I love the phrase, the bigger your dream, the bigger your team. So get other people involved as well. You can't do everything at once. You've got to be patient, but when the opportunity comes, you've got to be ready for it. So it could be a new funding program. It could be a project that's happening. It could even be an opportunity to speak to a bunch of Scarborough Community Renewal members on an online talk tonight. I mean, these are the types of opportunities that help get your message out to like-minded people. And then, now this is a little bit kind of in the self-development world, and I know this speaker next week, Randall Anjet, he may want to talk more about this, but expect miracles. You don't know who your allies are going to be. You don't know exactly where your support is going to come from, but don't let that stop you. Keep doing it, and surprises do happen. I'm sure no one believed the idea of having a third floor on that Clark Center. To me, every time I walk by that building, it's a miracle that came true. Make that miracle happen for your project. So what are we going to do? What are the next steps that we're doing? We're going to keep going with those watchwords of celebrating. We want to make it fun to come to the park for visitors, whether it's seeing Anne of Green Gables, which are those 3 cast members in that picture, or working with Scarborough Arts. And I want to give a shout out to Derek. I know he's here someplace. Hi, Derek. We hosted the Scarborough Sign a few years ago. And again, that was a great destination. We're going to keep collaborating. We're going to build partnerships, not only with the park groups that you see here, but with the other groups that are interested in coming to the park, in learning about the park, in having the park fun. We're also going to continue our advocating role. We're going to keep learning. We want to implement things. The city has this wonderful Guild Park Trails Master Plan. We've now created a sort of a little chapter of that called the Landscape Improvements for the Sculptors Cabin. We also know that to put any of this in place, the City Parks Department is chronically underfunded, and for us to expect them to do all of these things, we've learned enough to know that's not realistic. We do need another miracle. So we're going to start doing some fundraising. We're going to find out how, we don't really know what we're going to get into here. But again, this is the best practice that the New York Central Park Group did. And that was critical for turning that space around. We wanted to apply that lesson to Guild Park. So our whole goal here is for renewing the dream and the landmark. We want to create a unique hub for arts and community in Scarborough. And we want to welcome the world to a world caliber destination where art meets nature. So I have my email here if you want to get in touch with me after the presentation. And I think we have a little bit of time. I went through here. I was looking at the time. I think we got a few minutes for discussion. And I'm really thankful for everybody to be here and for SCRO's interest. And I think, I just really truly hope that the lessons that we've learned the hard way, that you can go to your groups, to your projects in your communities, in your neighborhoods, and start to apply these and circle back and tell us what worked for you, and we may be able to do that as well. So that's my wrap up. And I also want to introduce you to my friend on the Greek theater. That's a real deer. This is a picture. There was no photoshopping in here, and we call her Goldie Fawn.
Oh, God.
So thank you, everybody. And are we going to take
Yes.
message comments live or on chat? I haven't been watching the chat.
So I can handle that, John.
Thank you.
I'll take over moderating the questions. And if we were in a town hall meeting where we're in person, you would receive a thunderous round of applause. That was an excellent presentation. And you probably would have even got a standing ovation from most of us, because your work over the years has been exemplary. And you missed one thing off that list. You, the spark plug like you that I met John a few years ago. I was working on a heritage designation for Baby Point on the Humber River over in Etobicoke. And there's John Mason in the room trying to figure out how the hazard designations work so we can apply it in Guildwood. So, you know, that's the kind of go-to-ness and stick-to-itness that John had in this thing over the years. So thank you, John. So to ask questions, there's a couple of ways. You can throw a question into the chat. There are a couple of hands up. Denise Bacon is first. To raise your hand electronically, you go to the participants tab on the bottom. You'll see the long list of participants, but at the bottom of that, there's a raise hand function. You can raise your hand there, and then we'll ask you to unmute yourself and ask your question. So Denise is first. Go ahead and ask your question, Denise. Denise, are you there?
Mute.
Sorry about that. John, I think I raised my hand right at the beginning and I forgot to unraise it, but I just want to say thank you. I've grown up in the area and I've seen the changes over time. I've just been blown away. So it's great to actually see the force behind all of this change. So congratulations on the fabulous work you've done.
Well, thank you. And it's, as I said, it's more than one person. We have a big dream. We've got a small team, so we're looking to get a little bit more bench strength for all the things that we have that we want to do on the park. And it really is a team effort. I'm able to be a bit of a frontman for the team, but I notice a number of the members and supporters are here tonight. So if I'm articulating ideas and suggestions that they bring forward. So it is a team effort. So thank you, Denise.
And Gerard, you have your hand up.
No, I didn't.
It's still there.
Oh, then I thought I deleted it. I don't
Okay,
see it.
any other questions or comments? I'm sure there's questions for John. That's an amazing presentation, John.
I did see a note here from Michelle from 741 about town hall meeting never open the floor and follow up on vision to, for the residents. They only present when deals are already made, in some cases not at all. Yeah, that's definitely an issue. There are public meetings and there are public meetings. I know Dave Hardy is I saw Dave on the call here. I know Dave has huge experience on not only being in public forums, but also organizing and leading them. And I must say that public forum that the City of Toronto and the Taylor Hazel architects put on at Laurier, I can't remember the actual date, but it was phenomenal. They knew, they listened, they had markers, they had papers, they had maps, they had presentations, they had a lot of staff, they had senior staff, senior architects, they had junior architects there. They were, that still gives me goosebumps because it was such an effective meeting. And Councillor Ainsley was involved in setting that up. The people at Art Services and the Economic Development and Culture set that up. And you see, to me, this is the value of a meeting like this, because we know that a high caliber, high quality listening, a meeting where people use their ears works, and it's possible for the city to do them. And so something else where they just check off the public, public consultation, we had a meeting, check. No, that is not an effective public meeting. And being informed, this is where all these things are linked in together. Being informed and working with your counselor, talking with the city officials or whoever is doing that meeting before, it's, you can actually start helping organize it. And the other thing too is about being, you can't be angry all the time. Like, as I mentioned, you can point fingers, you can criticize, you can complain, and it certainly makes everybody feel, good after a while, but it doesn't get you anywhere. It's not productive. When you start criticizing city officials or development officials, anybody, where do they go? They go to ground. They just disappear. They're not going to come out again. They need to trust you, just like you need to trust them, that they're going to respect what you say. And that means you have to say what you want respectfully. And I mean, these are things that it's very easy in the heat of the moment when everybody's angry, when you see, almost 4,000 mature trees cut down by Jim and I will laugh about this, by foresters at Guild Park, making it look like a lumber camp, and people are coming out and crying on the park, saying it'll never come back. No animals, no birds will ever be back in this site, and they're so angry they want to lash out. Well, immediately, yes, that's what it looked like. But in the fullness of time, with some patience and knowing that Mother Nature sometimes takes, but sometimes gives away, it's a good model for us to keep in mind.
Any other questions for John? One thing you forgot to mention, John, was in the beginning description there, was that park is bookended by two schools. The lucky students who are in those two schools, Jack Minor and the other high school there at either side of it, they are very lucky students to be bookending that beautiful park.
Yeah, now another amazing observation is nobody knows how many people use Guild Park. As volunteers, we used to, when we had events, we would take attendance of the events. When Guild Festival Theatre sold tickets, they knew how many people were coming. When Guild in the state had events going on, they knew how many people were their clients. So we had a fundamental idea of how many people were coming, and we knew that the trend was going up. However, the city will measure the number of flower beds. They don't count the number of blades of grass. They do count the number of trees. They do measure the area of the turf in the lawn, but they do not know how many people come to Guild Park. My observation is that the students are probably the largest single group of users of the park, because for spare periods, they come to the park all the time. We want to encourage them. We want to encourage them by helping them understand the significance of Guild Park. It brings Canada alive to everyone. And the other neighbor we have is the new Chartwell seniors residence. So we're bookended by young people and older people. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place, that's for sure. And I'm very lucky to have you here to tell us the story, John. And a reminder to all those here with us tonight, our Scarborough is happening every 2 weeks at this time. It might slow down during the summer to a little less more rigorous schedule, but certainly we have had some fantastic stories about what's going on in Scarborough, the stuff that's happening. So make sure you spread the word and register for upcoming talks that'll be coming up on our Scarborough. And with that, I think the next one is, of course, Carol Stentz, the President and CEO of Variety Village. We're talking on April the 29th, the Variety of Children's Charity, continuing to lead the way to make sure more kids can play. So there is going to be a continued series of these Our Scarborough talks. And just like tonight, you're going to find out all kinds of tidbits you never knew about Scarborough, and be very proud of this place that we live and work. So thank you, John, for joining us. And just and to close out, I'll turn it over to Larry Watmore, who is the president of the Scarborough Community Renewal Organization, to say a few closing words.
Thanks very much, Jim, and thank you, John. That was a great presentation. we're very excited about our Scarborough as an opportunity to showcase so many great features about Scarborough, and also to highlight some of the community leaders and organizations that are working hard to address some of our challenges. As Jim was just saying, we have Karen Stintz coming up next. Please visit the SCRO website and sign up. We have Jillian Mason speaking on May 13th. Jillian was on the call tonight. On May 27th, we have Derek Spooner from Scarborough Arts. Derek is also on the call tonight. On June 10th, we have Mitch Cohen from Daniels Corporation, who we are working with closely on the redevelopment of the Scarborough Golden Mile. On June 24th, we have Lee Soda from Agincourt Community Services Association, and we already have speakers booked in July, August, September, and October. So this is a really hot forum for community leaders in Scarborough to present and to attend to find out all the great things that are happening here. There's a lot of passion for all things Scarborough amongst our community leaders, and we're just so pleased to be able to provide a vehicle to showcase all of this. SCRO's been working hard over the past year to build our profile in a way that can be of significant benefit to Scarborough. We're increasingly being consulted on important matters affecting Scarborough. And we are, and to follow up on John's comment, we are not shy about doing what we would call thoughtful advocacy to present Scarborough priorities to all three levels of government, and what we're saying is being noticed. So Scarborough is being heard in many forums, and that's a good thing. I hope you'll all visit our website at scro.ca to learn more about us if you don't know us already, to sign up for our monthly e-newsletters if you are not already receiving them, and to become a member of SCRO, so we can build an engaged constituency of people who are passionate about all things Scarborough. There's no membership fee, so please visit scro.ca and become really invested in the work that we're doing. And thanks again for being here tonight. And Jim, back to you.
Thanks very much, Larry, for wrapping that up. And my goodbye words are stay safe. The numbers are going up, as you can see, so stay safe, follow the protocols, and wish everyone a good night. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and please join us again in the future for another Scarborough barn burning story like we had tonight.